Okay, so in this video, we're going to go through cutting the patterns out and getting them laid out on our piece of felt to make the front of our pillow. So last video, we went through tracing all our patterns and getting them on the proper colors of felt. And now hopefully you've ironed them on to your felt, and we're to that point, so we can see our pattern is now ironed onto our felt. I can't really pull it off here. If I wanted to, I could pick up the edge of the paper backing of the Wonder Under, but you do not want to do that at this point. So now we're going to cut on the line. So thankfully I traced in red so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to cut this pattern out. All the way on the lines. Okay, here we are. Let's make sure I stay on the screen. A little bit of a bigger project than doing the ornament, so I have to be careful that I stay on the screen. All right, so there is my cutout. That's the center of the horse's face. So I'm going to put my felt aside. Now, for each pattern piece that you cut out, you're going to need to remove the paper backing. I find it helpful, there's another scrap, to run the tip of my scissors just gently across the piece of paper and peel off the backing that way. You can see if you go from that center seam how easy that is. If you try to do it from the edge, this is now already loosened, but sometimes when you try to do it from the edge, you end up trying to pick away what you've ironed on, and that's really what you're not trying to do. So making that little slit can be really helpful. Okay, so all of these little pieces of paper are going to be garbage. And I skipped ahead for you, and now I have all of the different pieces that we traced ready to go, so we can keep moving forward with how to do our layout. So I've got my little piece of felt here that's going to be the front of my pillow, and I'm going to put that down here. I also have my layout diagram, so depending on what animal you have, this will help you to figure out which piece should go where on your particular design. So I look here, and I'm going to take the piece that's furthest in the background, and you can tell what's behind because they have dotted lines. So that tells you that that edge is hidden behind another edge. So I'm going to start off with our neck piece here. So let's find this piece. And I mentioned yesterday that when you do this, the patterns that you're tracing end up in reverse of what you're going to end up with, because we traced onto this side and that's our Wonder Under side. So when you flip them over, you now get the reverse image of those. So I'm going to look at my pattern and try to orient my neck piece so that matches the pattern. You can see it matches right on here, and no matter what animal you do, they should line up like this. So I know I want to take this and I'm going to put it in the center, or in the center but the lower portion of my pillow front. Okay, and I've got it in the right orientation. Again, I check my picture, and there is my neck piece. So I have it in the right orientation. So now I'm going to say, okay, what do you think of my next part that's going to go on is going to be? Well, I'm going to take my big head piece and put that in. And if I look at my picture, I try to make some reference points. So we see that the head should actually go between these 2 points on our neck piece. So we're going to lay that on in here, and we don't want it all the way over to the edge. We want a little bit of an angle here. So I think I'm happy with that right there. We can always move them around if we need to. All right, so what am I going to put on next? Well, maybe I'll put on, maybe the center of the face. So we have this center face piece here. And if we look at that, where does that line up? Well, it actually hangs off the bottom of the head to make the more narrow portion of the horse's nose. So I'm going to hang that off down here. Even the little points, we see those points there? Those even hang off the bottom of the head. So we know we've got that kind of in the right alignment. It sort of goes in the center here. Okay. And then we see the rest of this nose detail. All right, so these are other little pieces, and it starts to get a little bit more complicated because you've got little pieces that you need to line up here. So let's see what we can find. And you can always match them up against your pattern So here appears to be my little nose piece. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you can see that. I didn't cut it perfectly apparently, but I think that's the right orientation. And that, you see, because the top of it is dotted, it's going to go underneath the end of the face piece. So we're going to take that little end of the muzzle, stick it underneath the face piece. And then we've got our two nostrils. So here's our two nostrils. And I'm going to place those on. And again, we don't have dotted lines here. We can see these are completely solid, so we know those are on top of the design. And if we look at the pattern here, we see that the edge of the round part of the nostril lines up with that little point. And then we put those in an orientation. And then we can still see that this little point at the bottom is still visible here. All right, so there we've got our nose. Let's now put some ears on. Oops, it looks like I forgot to take a piece of backing off. Whenever you're putting these down, make sure that you're putting the Wonder Under side down, which is pretty obvious on dark felt. You can hopefully see, yeah, if I hold this up closer, you can see that you can see the little netting on there, whereas this side is just the regular felt. It's really easy to see on dark. It is very difficult to see on white pieces. So here's our little white star. And there is the felty side, and here is the Wonder Under side. You can't really see it, but if you run your finger over it, you'll see that it's a little bit sticky on your Wonder Under side. All right, so let's go back to our ears. We've got our outer ear here, and this ear goes on this side when we're looking at our picture. There's our ear. It has a little inner ear piece. We're going to put that one in just like our picture. Now again, we see the dotted line, so we know the edge of the ear needs to go underneath the head. Here is our other ear. We're going to put it off to the side like we see in the picture. We have this little edge that kind of makes the shadow of the inner ear for that ear that's pointed a little bit backwards. All right, so there we have our ears. Now we can put on our mane and tail, our mane and our forelock. Now our forelock in this case is 3 different pieces. I tend to put this one on first, so that piece right in the center. Unfortunately, the black on the brown is not showing up as well as I might have hoped. Then you've got this piece coming off to the side that makes sort of that sweeping mane there, and then a piece here that's just up against the head. So we line those all up, make a little sort of flowing forelock. The mane comes in here, put that right up against the neck. You want to line that up. It can actually sit a little bit above, depending on how well you cut those little lumps there. That can simulate the mane coming over the neck. And then the final thing that we have to put in place here are eyes. And we see we got 2 different eyes. One looks a little bit bigger than the other. So here is our wider eye, and we can see that one goes over here. And if we look at the placement on our diagram, the top of that eye should pretty much go right where the seam between the neck and the head are. Then the other eye, if we look at our placement, is going to go kind of after this little curve. So there are our 2 eyes. And finally, I made a little star for the middle of this horse's head, so I'm going to put that there. Then I'm going to look at my design and decide if I'm happy with how this guy looks. I think his head looks maybe a little bit long. I might push this up a little bit. In fact, I might push my star up too. And push my muzzle in a little bit. It's all in what you like for your look, in how your horse looks. But there, basically, we can see we've put all of our pieces. Maybe I want my star down a little bit. You're free to move them however you want until you iron it. You'll notice that even little tiny changes can make a big difference in the way your horses look. So I'm going to put this eye a little bit more on an angle over here, see if I like how that looks. I think that gives them a little more personality. But basically there is the layout. If you're doing a dog or a cat, it's going to be the same deal. You're going to have a layout diagram. Pay attention to your dotted lines for what goes behind. And then you're going to lay it out onto here. Now our next step is going to be to iron this on. You're going to want to move this really carefully to your ironing surface. Place a piece of cotton material over the top of it, and then iron it with a medium to hot iron. Remember, don't get too hot. This is partly polyester felt. If you leave the iron on there too long, you will in fact melt it, and you don't want to do that. And when you're ironing, you want to place your iron down, leave it in place for about 5 seconds, pick it up and move it over. You don't want to rub back and forth because then all of your little pieces could be moving around under that iron. So pick up and move and place, and it's going to take a little bit of time, a minute or two. Eventually the Wunder Under backing is going to heat up and it's going to adhere to your felt. So do that for, you know, maybe 2 minutes. Just keep moving your iron around, leave it down for 5 seconds. Just keep leaving it down. And then you can peek under your cotton fabric and see if your material has now adhered to your pillow face. So that should get the face of your pillow really well started. So go have at it with the iron. And the next video, I'll show you some basic stitching.